You ever have one of those moments in life where you wish you could just hit rewind? Just go back, even a few days, a few hours, and stop yourself before everything changes? I think about that moment every day now. And the truth is, I didn't see it coming. Not even a little bit. When my husband told me he had to leave town again for work, another 2-week trip to some big corporate thing, I wasn't surprised. That's just our normal now. I smiled, kissed him goodbye at the airport, told him I'd be fine. And I meant it. At least, I thought I did. But then, he turned to his best friend, Daniel, his lifelong best friend, and said, "Take care of her while I'm gone." Yeah? And Daniel, with his usual easy smile, nodded and said, "Of course, man. You don't even have to ask. Simple. Harmless. Innocent. Right?" Pause. A long breath. Voice drops, heavy with regret. I wish I could tell you it ended there. That nothing happened. That everything stayed right where it should have. But something about those 2 weeks, it changed everything. And I need to tell you this, not because I'm proud of it, God knows I'm not. But because sometimes, when the cracks in a marriage grow wide enough, it doesn't take much for something or someone to slip through. Soft chuckle, more sadness than humor. You'd think I'd know better. I mean, we've been married almost 10 years. We've got routines, responsibilities, a home that looks picture perfect from the outside. But what most people don't see are the silences. The empty seats at dinner. The cold side of the bed. The way I started talking to myself out loud just to feel like someone was listening. Mike, my husband, he's not a bad man. He works hard. He provides. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being seen. Stopped being touched like I mattered. And I started living in the shadows of our life. Daniel? He wasn't supposed to be anything more than a family friend. I mean, he's known Mike since they were kids. He's been around since before we even got married. Always kind, always funny, always respectful. So when he came over to fix that broken faucet in the kitchen, or offered to mow the lawn since Mike was gone, I thought, this is just what friends do. But what happens when the only person who makes you feel seen isn't your husband? Voice becomes quieter, as if confessing something personal to a close friend. It didn't start with anything big. Just small things. Little comments. Lingering looks. The kind of moments you brush off at first because admitting they mean something, that would make it real. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. But here's the thing. Feelings don't wait for permission. They sneak in during the quiet, lonely hours. They fill the empty space your partner left behind. And before you know it, what was once unthinkable starts to feel inevitable. I didn't plan for any of it. I didn't want to fall. But something about Daniel's presence. It felt like warmth in a house that had grown so cold. And when things finally crossed the line, it was like everything inside me screamed stop, but I couldn't. I didn't. Short silence. A breath of pain. And now I live with that choice. I live with it every single day. If you've ever felt invisible in your marriage, if you've ever longed for someone to just notice you again, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand how it happened. Maybe you won't. But either way, this is my story. And it's not pretty. Soft warning tone. Don't get comfortable. This one gets messy. If you've ever felt emotionally stranded, if you've ever questioned the strength of your own vows, stick around. Because by the end of this, you'll either hate me, or you'll see yourself in me. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand how one moment, one man, one choice, can change everything. Soft, vulnerable tone shifts to inviting. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button to Shocking Infidelity Saga, and tap the bell so you don't miss a second of what's coming next. I need to tell you the whole truth. Because what started with a simple favor spiraled into something I can never take back. Let me take you back to the beginning. Mike and I have been married for almost 10 years. 10 solid years of partnership, of building a life together, of doing all the things we thought we were supposed to do. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood. We had 2 kids. We decorated the walls with smiling family photos. From the outside, it probably looked like we had it all figured out. But inside, It felt like I was slowly disappearing. Before the kids, I used to teach. I loved it. I was good at it. I had something of my own rhythm, my own identity. But when we had our second child, we agreed I'd stay home for a while. It made sense. Mike's job was demanding, the hours were brutal, and someone had to be there. I told myself I'd go back eventually. But eventually kept slipping further and further away. And somewhere in between nap schedules and packing lunches, I started to feel invisible. Mike is a good man. He's never been cruel. Never been unfaithful. But somewhere along the way, he became a ghost in our home. He'd leave before the kids woke up, come back after they were asleep. Always tired. Always stressed. And always saying the same thing, I'm doing this for us. I stopped asking him to sit down for dinner. Stopped trying to tell him about my day. He'd just nod, maybe scroll through emails while I talked, or say, without looking up. After a while, I just stopped trying. Our home became quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy. You know what I mean? That silence that wraps around you. Not peaceful, but lonely. Rainy days made it worse. I'd sit by the window, watching the drops slide down the glass and wonder how it had gotten this way. And then there was Daniel. Daniel's been in Mike's life since they were kids. Best friends, practically brothers. He was the best man at our wedding. He was the one who helped us move into this house. He's been there for birthdays, barbecues, hospital visits, everything. He's always been around. Daniel got divorced about a year ago. His wife left him. There were rumors. Some say she cheated. Others say they just grew apart. I never asked. It didn't feel like my place. But after the divorce, he started coming around more. At first, it was casual. A quick visit to drop something off for Mike. A beer on the back porch. Fixing something Mike didn't have time for. He never stayed too long. Always polite. Always respectful. But over time, I started to notice little things. The way he'd ask how I was doing and really wait for an answer. The way he looked at me when I talked, like I mattered. Like I wasn't just someone's wife or someone's mom. Like I was me. I brushed it off. I told myself I was reading into it. That I was just starved for adult conversation, for someone to see me. That it didn't mean anything. But then Mike had that trip. 2 weeks overseas. Some big conference. Lots of late-night meetings, time zone differences. He barely looked up from his phone when he told me about it. Just kissed my forehead and said, "You'll be okay. I'll have Daniel check in on you." And that was that. I didn't ask for it. I didn't plan anything. But the second Mike walked out the door, it felt like something shifted. The house felt bigger. Emptier. Every creak of the floor, every ticking clock, it all just reminded me that I was alone again. And Daniel, well, he showed up like he said he would. He came by the next day to help with the kitchen faucet. It had been dripping for weeks. Mike kept saying he'd get to it, but of course, he never did. Daniel fixed it in less than 20 minutes. We chatted while he worked. I offered him coffee. He accepted. We sat at the table. We talked. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even flirty. It was just easy. He told me he'd been struggling. Said the house felt too quiet since the divorce. That some mornings, he'd forget she wasn't there anymore. I told him I knew that kind of quiet. That mine wasn't from someone leaving, but from someone slowly slipping away. We didn't say anything else after that. But we didn't need to. Daniel always had a way of making me feel seen. But I never thought much of it. Not until I had no one else to talk to. Not until the silence got too loud. Not until his visits became the only thing I looked forward to in a day filled with laundry and dishes and a husband who barely remembered to call. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was comfort. It was connection. And it was dangerous. But at the time, I didn't see it like that. I just thought I finally had someone to talk to. Someone who looked at me and actually saw me. And that felt like everything I'd been missing. Mike barely looked up from his laptop when he told me he was leaving again. Another trip. 2 weeks this time. Europe. Meetings. Dinners. Networking. I didn't even flinch. I'd heard it all before. He said it like it was just another bullet point on his to-do list. kissed me on the cheek, said he'd bring something back for the kids, and then he was gone. Just like that. Before leaving, he turned to Daniel and said, "Hey, keep an eye on things for me, yeah? You know how it is." Daniel smiled and nodded. "Of course, man. I got you." And then it began. The next morning, Daniel texted me, "Need help with anything while Mike's gone?" I hesitated for a second before replying. I told myself it was just polite. Friendly. I mentioned the faucet, still leaking, and the lawn, which had gotten out of control since the last rain. He showed up later that day, toolbox in hand, same easy smile. Fixed the faucet in under an hour. Stayed to cut the grass. I offered him something to drink. He said sure. It felt normal. He didn't rush off like most people do. He stayed for a bit, leaning on the kitchen counter while I folded laundry and joked about how Mike never learned how to use a mower properly. We laughed. The kind of laugh I hadn't had in a long time, the real kind. The kind that leaves a little warmth in your chest afterward. That became the rhythm. Every couple of days, Daniel would swing by. Something to fix, something to check on. A quick hello turned into a full conversation. The silence in the house didn't feel so heavy when he was around. I started looking forward to it. And then, there was that night. It had been raining all afternoon. One of those slow, steady rains that makes the world feel quiet. The kind that soaks everything in gray. The kids were already asleep, and I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching a movie alone, when the power flickered once, then again, and then it went out completely. I sat there in the dark for a few seconds, heart thudding just a little faster than usual. Then there was a knock at the door. It was Daniel, soaked through his jacket, hair damp from the rain. He said, "Saw the lights go out when I was driving by. Figured I'd check in, make sure you were okay." I laughed, a little embarrassed, and said I was fine. But I let him in anyway. We lit a few candles. Sat in the living room while the storm rumbled outside. I poured 2 glasses of wine. We clinked glasses without saying much. Just sat there, listening to the storm. At first, we talked about random things. Childhood stories. Silly memories. He told me how he and Mike once tried to build a treehouse and ended up falling out of the tree on the same day. I laughed so hard, I actually had to wipe my eyes. Then, things got quieter. Slower. The space between our words stretched out. At one point, I reached for my glass and our hands brushed. It was nothing, just a touch. But I didn't pull away. Neither did he. He looked at me. Just looked. And for a second, I forgot to breathe. It was quiet. No music. No distractions. Just the sound of rain against the windows, the dim flicker of candlelight, and the weight of a moment neither of us planned for. I pulled my hand back first. Told him I was tired. He nodded. Said he should go before the roads got worse. We stood by the door. He reached for his jacket. Paused. Said, "Thanks for the wine." I smiled. Said, "Thanks for checking in." And then he left. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it for a long time, staring into the dark. It was nothing. Just 2 friends. That's what I told myself. But even as I whispered those words, trying to convince myself, my heart was already racing for all the wrong reasons. After that night, I told myself it was fine. Nothing happened. Just 2 adults sitting through a power outage. A little wine. A little conversation. A little silence. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way his eyes held mine for just a moment too long. About the way my hand lingered on his. About the flutter in my chest when he showed up at the door. It was a quiet kind of chaos, one that lived in the small spaces of the day. When I was folding laundry or stirring pasta or brushing my teeth. Just a thought here, a memory there. But it was constant. And then came the worst part of it all. I started hoping he'd come back. I found myself listening for the sound of his car pulling up. I started checking the windows when I knew it was around the time he usually dropped by. And when he didn't, there was this little ache in my chest. Disappointment. A sadness I tried to ignore. But when he did come by, God, I lit up inside. And I hated myself for it. But I couldn't stop. I told myself it was innocent. He's just helping. That's what Mike asked him to do. That was my line. The one I repeated like a prayer. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't looking forward to the help. I was looking forward to him. Daniel made things feel light. Simple. Like I could breathe when he was around. He asked about the kids. Told me I was a great mom. Not in that casual, empty way people say it, but like he meant it. Like he saw it. He remembered the little things, like how I used to paint on the weekends before the kids were born. How I always put cinnamon in my coffee. How I used to talk about going back to school for my master's degree. Mike never remembered any of that. Not even close. Mike used to be that person. But over time, he just stopped showing up. There were so many little moments that added up over the years. Like the time I planned a weekend away for our anniversary. Booked the cabin. Arranged the babysitter. Packed his favorite snacks. He canceled last minute for a work thing. Didn't even apologize. Or the time I told him I felt like we were drifting. That I missed him. That I missed us. He just sighed, rubbed his eyes, and said, "Can we not do this right now?" I stopped trying after that. So when Daniel looked at me and actually heard me, it felt like I'd been pulled from underwater. I wasn't craving sex. I was craving to be noticed. To be appreciated. To be important to someone again. I started dressing differently. Subtle things. Nicer tops. A little mascara. I told myself it was for me, but I knew it wasn't. I wanted to feel desirable again. I wanted to feel like a woman, not just a tired mom who blended into the walls. And the guilt? It came in waves. Some mornings, I'd stand in the shower and just stare at the tiles, trying to wash the shame off me. Because I hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. But the way I felt when I thought of Daniel. That was wrong, wasn't it? I still slept in the same bed with Mike. Still cooked his meals. Still answered his calls when he remembered to make them. But my heart wasn't where it used to be. It was slowly shifting. Without my permission. I started avoiding eye contact with Mike. Started going to bed earlier so I wouldn't have to lie there in silence next to him. I stopped telling him about my day. And he didn't notice. Not once. And that made it worse. Because if he couldn't even see me slipping away, maybe I wasn't even worth holding on to in the first place. The truth? Daniel didn't steal anything. I handed it to him. Bit by bit. Emotion by emotion. And every time I smiled when I saw his name pop up on my phone. Every time I opened the door just a little faster when he came over. Every time I laughed too long at his jokes. I was inching closer to something I couldn't take back. And I knew it. But knowing isn't the same as stopping. Not when it's the first time in years someone's made you feel alive again. And that was the most dangerous part of all. After a while, Daniel started staying longer. At first, it was just practical. He'd fix something around the house. Tighten a door hinge, help move a piece of furniture, and then hang around afterward. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just a cup of coffee, or sometimes wine. Small talk. Laughter. Then it changed. Our conversations got deeper. Softer. Slower. We stopped talking about the weather or the kids or the faucet that needed fixing. Instead, we started sharing things. Things that don't usually come up unless there's trust, or maybe just loneliness. He told me about the nights he spent alone in his house, pacing the floors, wondering what he did wrong. Said his wife had been distant for a long time before she finally told him there was someone else. That she didn't love him anymore. That she hadn't for a while. He said it broke him. Made him feel small. Invisible. I just sat there and listened, my heart cracking for reasons I couldn't explain. And I told him quietly that I knew that feeling. Not because I'd been left, but because I felt alone in my marriage too. And had for years. We didn't cry. We didn't hold each other. We just sat in it together. There was this one night I'll never forget. It had been a long day. The kids were fussy. I was tired, stretched thin, on the edge of tears. Daniel showed up with dinner. Chinese takeout and a bottle of red wine. He said I looked like I needed a break. And I did. After the kids were down, we sat at the kitchen table, eating straight out of the cartons. The lights were dim. The house was quiet, and it felt more intimate than anything I'd had with Mike in months. Daniel told me something then, something he hadn't said before. He said that after his wife left, he didn't think he'd ever be able to look at a woman again without wondering if she'd do the same. He said he didn't know if he could trust anyone anymore. And I told him I didn't know if I could trust myself. There was silence after that. Long, heavy silence. Then he reached out and gently touched my cheek. Just his fingers. Light and hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he should. And I froze. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. And I didn't know what to do. So I pulled away. Not quickly. Not angrily. Just enough. I didn't say a word. I didn't scold him or ask him what he was doing. But I didn't tell him to stop coming over either. That night, I lay in bed for hours. I kept replaying that moment, his touch, the look in his eyes, the ache in my chest. And for the first time, I ignored Mike's call. The phone lit up beside me on the nightstand. I saw his name, and I let it ring. I told myself I was just tired, that I didn't want to force a conversation with someone who'd barely spoken to me in days. But the truth was, I didn't want to be interrupted, because in that moment, I didn't want Mike. I wanted Daniel, and that terrified me. After that, the lines blurred more and more. Daniel would stay after dinner. We'd sit on the couch and talk about everything: books, music, memories from when we were younger. He made me laugh. Made me forget what time it was. Made me forget who I was supposed to be. He'd brush his hand against mine when we passed each other a drink. Sometimes he'd lean in just a little too close when he laughed. And every single time, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I felt alive again. Not in the loud, reckless way you see in movies, but in the quiet, electric way that sneaks up on you. In glances. In pauses. In breaths held just a second too long. Mike kept calling. Kept sending short texts. How are the kids? Hope everything's okay. I'll be back in a few days. And I answered him. But the replies were short. Distant. Emotionless. Because my emotions were already somewhere else. I started lying to myself, telling myself that Daniel and I hadn't done anything. That nothing had actually happened. That feelings didn't count if you didn't act on them. But deep down, I knew better. Something was happening. And I wasn't sure I wanted it to stop. It was the last night of Mike's trip. The house was quiet. The kids were already asleep. And I was sitting on the couch in my pajamas, hair tied up, a blanket around my legs, just existing. I didn't plan anything. I didn't dress up. I didn't light candles or spray perfume. I wasn't trying to create a moment. But that's the thing about moments, they don't care if you're ready. Daniel texted me, "You eaten?" I said no. I hadn't even thought about dinner. 20 minutes later, he was at the door with takeout. Thai food this time. And a bottle of red wine. He walked in like he always did, comfortable, familiar, easy. We didn't talk much at first. Just opened the containers, filled our plates, poured the wine. We ate sitting on the couch, watching some old comedy we'd both seen 100 times. We laughed at the same parts. Quoted lines together. It felt like we were both trying to hold on to something light. Something safe. But it didn't stay there. After the movie ended, the credits rolled, and neither of us moved to turn it off. The TV screen went dark, and the only light in the room came from the small lamp in the corner. I looked over at him. He was already looking at me. There was a pause, a stillness. And then he said, almost whispering, "You look beautiful like this." I laughed, nervous. I said, "I'm in pajamas. My hair's a mess." He didn't blink. "You're still beautiful." And that's when something inside me cracked. It had been so long since anyone looked at me like that. So long since I felt wanted, not for what I could do, or how well I kept things together, but just for being me. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from my face. And this time, I didn't pull away. His hand stayed there, resting against my cheek. I felt my breath catch. My chest was tight, like something had been building there for weeks, months, and was finally about to break. Then he leaned in. Slowly, gently, like he was giving me time to stop him. But I didn't. Our lips touched, and everything else disappeared. The guilt, the logic, the rules, they all dissolved in that kiss. It was soft at first, careful, like we were both afraid it would disappear if we moved too fast. But then something shifted. It got deeper, messier, more urgent. Years of hunger and neglect poured out in a moment that neither of us could contain. I felt his hands on my skin, his breath against my neck. My fingers tangled in his shirt, pulling him closer. We didn't say a word. There was nothing to explain, nothing to question. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard the sound of my wedding vows breaking. It wasn't love. Not really. It was escape. It was need. It was two broken people grabbing onto each other to feel whole for a moment. When it was over, we didn't speak. He got dressed in silence, avoided my eyes. I wrapped myself in the blanket and stared at the floor. He walked to the door, paused, then said, "I'm sorry." And before I could even respond, he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of it in my head. The way his hand felt. The sound of his voice when he said my name. The way I didn't hesitate. And all I could think was, what have I done? I crossed the line. No more excuses. No more justifications. No more pretending it was harmless. I betrayed my husband. And worse, I wasn't even sure I regretted it. Not yet. Just confusion. Shame. Silence. That was the night everything changed. And nothing would ever be the same again. Mike came home 2 days later. He walked through the door, dropped his bags in the hallway, and gave me a tired smile like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't done something I couldn't take back. I smiled too, kissed him on the cheek, asked about his trip, told him dinner was in the oven. And just like that, I was playing the part again. Wife, mother, keeper of secrets. He didn't notice anything different. Not in me. Not in the way I moved, or avoided his eyes, or flinched ever so slightly when he reached for my hand. He was jet-lagged, distracted, caught up in stories from the trip, work drama, meetings that ran too long, clients that were impossible. He didn't notice that I barely spoke, that I kept excusing myself to check on the kids when they were already asleep. He didn't see it, but I felt everything. Guilt sat in my chest like a stone. I couldn't eat, couldn't breathe properly. I kept replaying that night in my head, Daniel's hands, his voice, the way he left without a word, the way I let it happen. And Daniel, he disappeared. No calls, no texts, no knocking on the door with a toolbox or takeout. Nothing. He vanished like he'd never been there. And that should have made things easier. It didn't. It made it worse. Because now, on top of the shame, there was panic. There was silence. There was this huge, gaping hole where something once felt alive. And now all I could do was wonder, what is he thinking? Is he regretting it? Is he going to tell Mike? Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time Mike looked at me a second too long, my stomach twisted. I started losing sleep. Started snapping at the kids. Started crying in the shower just to let something out. And still, Mike didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and just didn't ask. One night, about a week after he got back, Mike suggested we go out to dinner. Just the two of us. Said we needed to reconnect. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I said yes, of course. I got dressed, did my makeup, tried to look like I used to look for him. But everything about me felt fake. Heavy. Like I was wearing someone else's skin. We went to this little Italian place across town. One we hadn't been to in years. It was loud, full of clinking glasses and soft lighting. I tried to focus on the menu, but my hands were trembling. I kept checking the door. I don't even know why. Until I saw him. Daniel. He walked in, casually, like he belonged there. And he wasn't alone. He was with a woman. Pretty. Confident. Laughing at something he said. I froze. He hadn't seen me at first. But when he did, when our eyes met, it felt like the entire room went still. He stopped mid-step. Just for a second. Our eyes locked, and in that one moment, I saw everything I had been avoiding: guilt, confusion, pain, and something else I couldn't name. Mike didn't notice. He was too busy talking about some project, waving his fork in the air, completely unaware that my entire world had just cracked open again. Daniel looked away first. He walked right past us. Sat with his date a few tables over. Didn't say a word. But the tension, it was thick. Suffocating. I couldn't eat. Could barely swallow my wine. My hands stayed in my lap, clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. Every laugh from his table felt like a slap. Every minute that passed, I wanted to run. But I stayed. I smiled when Mike made a joke. I nodded at all the right times. I played the part again. When we got home, I went straight to the bathroom. Locked the door. Stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. And just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, when I thought I could finally close this chapter and pretend it never happened, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. One message. We need to talk. I can't pretend nothing happened. I stared at the message for a long time. We need to talk. I can't pretend nothing happened. Just one line. Simple. But it hit like a wrecking ball. I read it over and over again, as if maybe, just maybe, the meaning would change. I didn't respond. I just sat there, frozen, phone in hand, heart pounding in my ears. Because I didn't know what scared me more. Talking to him again, or never hearing from him again. There was a part of me, God help me, that missed him. Craved the way he made me feel, even if it was wrong. Even if it was selfish. Even if it broke something I might never be able to fix. When I thought about Daniel, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, alive. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about love. It was about feeling wanted. Chosen. And yet, the guilt was relentless. It didn't scream. It whispered. Constantly. In the quiet of the night. In the silence between Mike and me. In the moments when I caught my own reflection and didn't recognize the person I had become. I imagined telling Mike. I imagined sitting him down, looking him in the eye, and speaking the truth out loud. I pictured the way his face would change. The betrayal. The confusion. I imagined him asking why. And I wouldn't even know what to say. Because how do you explain that you didn't go looking for it? That you never meant to fall, that it wasn't even about falling at all? That it was about drowning, and someone finally reaching in? Would he understand that I didn't stop loving him? I just forgot how to feel loved by him? No. He wouldn't. He'd never look at me the same again. And then I imagined the rest. The kids. The questions. The separation. The broken family. The split holidays. The silence that would replace a decade of shared memories. I couldn't do that to them. But then there was Daniel. And the part of me that still wondered what he felt. Did he regret it? Did it haunt him the way it haunted me? Or was it just a moment of weakness, fueled by wine, loneliness, and years of emotional residue? Was I something real to him? Or just someone to fill the space his ex-wife left behind? He never said anything after that message. Never sent another text. Never followed up. And I didn't reply. I just let the message sit there in my phone, unopened, like a wound I was too afraid to clean out. But I didn't delete his number. I didn't block him. I told myself I should. I even hovered over the option once, thumb shaking above the screen, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Because what if he reached out again? What if he had something more to say? What if part of me still needed to hear it? And that's what tore me apart most of all. Not just the guilt. Not just the betrayal. But the fact that some part of me didn't want to let go. I wanted closure. I wanted clarity. I wanted to understand what it all meant. But maybe there's no meaning in something that was never supposed to happen. Maybe it was just two broken people, grabbing onto each other for comfort in the dark. And maybe that's worse. Because if it meant nothing, then I destroyed a part of myself for nothing. And if it meant something, then I lost something I was never meant to have. So I did the only thing I could do. I deleted the message. But I didn't block him. Because I wasn't ready to bury it. Not completely. Not yet. And that, I think, was my real confession. I haven't told Mike. And honestly, I don't know if I ever will. Some days, I think about coming clean. about laying it all out, facing whatever comes. But then I picture his face. The way he looks at our kids. The way he still calls me babe without thinking. The way he assumes everything's fine because I've made it look fine. And I just can't. I don't know what that makes me. A coward? A liar? Maybe. But I'm also just someone who made a mistake. Someone who let the loneliness get too loud. Someone who didn't feel seen until the wrong person looked. And not a day goes by that I don't think about it. About what I did. About what could have happened if I had made a different choice. If I had told Daniel not to come over that night. If I had answered Mike's call. If I had remembered who I used to be before all of this. But those are the kinds of ifs that don't change anything. They just haunt you quietly. So now I live with it. With the secret. With the ache. With the memory. And with the constant question echoing in the back of my mind. Was it real? Or was I just fooling myself the whole time? I don't have the answers. But maybe you do. Have you ever felt emotionally abandoned in your relationship? Have you ever wanted something so badly, just to feel seen, that you lost sight of what was right? Would you have told the truth? Or buried it like I did? Tell me in the comments. Please. I read every single one. And if you've ever stood on the edge of something you couldn't take back, if you've ever looked in the mirror and seen a stranger staring back, then maybe you'll understand me. Maybe you won't. But either way, this is my truth. And if stories like mine speak to you, if they make you feel a little less alone in your own messy, complicated reality, don't forget to like and subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. There are more stories to tell. More truths to unpack. Final reflection, soft, honest, and heavy with meaning. Loneliness. It's more dangerous than anyone tells you. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It convinces you that you deserve something, anything, to feel alive again. To feel whole. It tells you that this one choice, this one moment will make it better. But the truth is, some choices, once made, can never be undone. And no matter how hard you try, you can't unfeel something that changed you. So if you're listening, if you've ever been close to that edge, please, don't let yourself fall.